Mayor, we're ready to kick it off whenever you'd like to formally do that. And Neve will be filling in for Anthony until he gets in.
Terrific.
Okay.
This is a special meeting of the Palm Desert City Council to establish our goals for 2023 and to take stock of progress on last year's goals so that we have that context and don't overload with more than we can successfully chew and swallow. For anyone watching or listening, Council has had the opportunity to submit some draft ideas for consideration, and staff will be presenting both a recap of progress on last year's goals, as well as leading us through discussion of those ideas. So, Todd, who will kick us off?
I will go ahead and kick off. And Neve, do you have control of the PowerPoint? Thank you. So we go to the next slide. So just to, again, briefly to reiterate Mayor Kelly's point, today's purpose is to review our progress on the goals that the City Council established for staff last year, roughly about this time. This is an important process that we go through in order to make sure that we are prioritizing your requests in the budget process as we're developing the budget for 23-24. It's also important to us from the perspective that it sets my work plan and the management team's work plan. So we're going to take you through the management team, each one of the goals where our team leader is involved, make sure that you understand what we have accomplished, what the next steps will be. And then we'll be asking as well whether this should remain a goal as we wrap up in the next year heading into 23-24. There's going to be a couple of points here with which we make some recommendations to you regarding the existing goals and potentially altering those. And then when we wrap up, there are probably 5 to 8 new ideas for largely projects, more than I'd say goals, that we'd like to talk to the council about. So we tried to put those in a format to make it easy to understand and easy for you to have a dialogue about, to give us your feedback. So I'm going to start off today with Eric Seha. I'm talking a little bit about progress made on the Palm Desert campus project.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. Excited to give you an update on this goal from last year because there's been some tremendous progress made in regards to the CSU Palm Desert campus. The city, in partnering with the Priority 1 Coachella Valley nonprofit here that advocates for a standalone CSU here in Palm Desert, was able to work with Strategies 360s and our local state representatives to secure $79 million for a new building at the CSU here in Palm Desert. That building's been identified as a student center, and we've recently been assigned one of our council members to sit on the planning and advisory board for the design and guidance of that building. That includes a number of new services for the campus, including academic support center, a new health and fitness center, multi-purpose room, a veteran success center. There's a new campus and a bookstore that's provided, along with a cafe and lounge. So the planning is well underway through this process. They hope to have a schematic design completed later this year, with the construction to start sometime in late 2024, 2025. Our next steps for this is to continue working with Priority 1 Coachella Valley and continue to work with Strategy 360s, because what we've seen now that the budget at the state has seen some deficiencies in their expected revenues, that they are looking to cut items out of their budget. We want to make sure that the $79 million that's secured stays secured for this campus. And we continue to pursue avenues for additional fundings to expand the campus and see it still continue to be a standalone campus as part of the CSU system. So that's kind of our update for this goal. Now I think I'll pass it over to Todd if there's no questions for the next goal.
Okay, next slide. Yeah, last year, the Westfield Mall was obviously of major importance to the city council. We had just learned that Westfield had walked away from the note, the Palm Desert Mall. And so we did intervene. I think the accomplishments that occurred this year, we did secure a contract with CB Richard Ellis to advise us on real estate services. They have done a great job in terms of managing tenant relations with the big boxes who they deal with all over the country, and kept those lines of communication open. So we know what we need to be prioritizing and what the issues are. Council did we did ask council to adopt a resolution requiring a specific plan for any redevelopment of the site. The important thing is we've got 72 acres on that site, and we wanted to be sure that any development proposals that were brought before you were done with more of a long-term vision in place, rather than one of the 7 property owners trying to negotiate out of their respective contractual obligations and going their own way. So we've been able to communicate that requirement to the note holders' attorneys, and they're aware of that. CBRE did help us get in contact with a company called StreetSense, which helped us with coordinate a market study and develop a market study for the mall property. Really what that was an exercise stating that if we were a private developer looking at acquiring that property, what would be the logical uses today? What are the demands in this particular market area that we could rely upon? So that market study was used to basically put together a sample redevelopment plan, which was just ideas based upon what the market is still missing this particular area based on development patterns. And we utilized that market study and to host and turn it into a document to meet with developers about in June of 2022. At that time, Jones Lang LaSalle representatives who are currently managing the mall had told us that they were expecting an early fall sales of the mall, which did not actually happen. So we were still able to communicate with multiple developers who have been in constant contact with us about what we see as the potential reuses of the property, and trying to facilitate those expectations between the development community and the city council and let them know that we are here to help. So we are continuing to maintain those relationships with those developers as well as the note holders' attorneys, which at some point, I'm hoping in the next year or two, we've got a little bit better gauge on when that property will be out to market. But it was an important exercise in the sense of communicating to the development community that we are taking a more practical rather than academic approach to the mall. I think next steps right now in the mall is we are continuing to reach out to contacts with Jones Lang LaSalle to determine when the mall will be available for sale. What we're hearing right now is that the ownership group still hasn't decided when that's going to occur, and actually still hasn't even finished foreclosing on the note. So it's important that we keep those lines of communication open, so when that opportunity does present itself, we can introduce them to the development community members who have shown interest in the mall. In addition, we're continuing to engage with CBRE regarding strategy. Now that the city is a equity partner, having recently acquired the Seritage site, the idea would be, what are our obligations? What are the opportunities? And how can we best leverage that to make sure that the property owned by the city is part of a planned manageable redevelopment? So I think we've done what we can right now. We're continuing to have conversations with the attorneys that they're based in San Diego right now, just trying to understand exactly what the owners of the note holders rather are looking for in order to get the process started, and to make sure that they can articulate to the owners of the remainder of the mall anyway what the process would be on our end as well. So that's where we are at this point, and I think it's been a fairly aggressive approach that we've taken. Any questions about the mall? Okay.
I
Next
have
slide. Yeah.
May I have a quick question?
Yeah.
And I appreciate the aggressive approach we took, because I don't think there was anything else that could have gotten us where we needed to go with it. Are there any things, and I see your next steps, but are there any things that we need to be really aware of as we go forward? Or is it just, we're just going to keep going on that road we're going on?
I think that's all we can do. Right now with the rest of the mall, Jones Lang LaSalle has the court-ordered authority to manage it and make sure that the asset is retaining as much value as it can before they put it out on the market. But the tenant relations are probably the biggest thing. We're continuing to try to calm the big boxes in particular down, that we are here, that we will be working with them through the process, and that there is a place for them in any redevelopment. That was probably the biggest concern that we've heard articulated. In addition, the contract has paid dividends with CBRE, just in the sense of trying to understand what is needed in terms of investment to retain some tenants as well. And so we've had a number of conversations behind the scenes with JLL in terms of what their strategy is, and what their plan is for trying to retain tenants, which is solely their responsibility and spirit to oversee. So I think right now we're just in a holding pattern. And just continuing to keep those dialogues with the owners' representatives as open as possible. Next slide. Yep. One of the goals last year was to investigate the potential of annexing property north of I-10. This became a topic in terms of the interchange and the impact that the stadium might have on the city, potential redevelopment, or potential development of the area around the Classic Club, the stadium that was recently constructed. So Eric and I have been in frequent contacts with Burger Foundation representatives. There's been some outreach to LAFCO, just in terms of what the potential rules of the game would be should the council ever decide to annex out into this area. So we've got a little bit more clarity. And I think the biggest issue here is just still the fact that the entire area out there from Cook to Washington, north of I-10, is still in the Cathedral City sphere of influence, which is a significant problem. The Cathedral City Council must agree to allow to have their area voluntarily disconnected, the sphere of influence, and Palm Desert to step in and take that over. So there's a lot of procedural hurdles that we needed to understand and start conversations on. We've been doing that. I think the biggest issue in this particular area is IID. There was recently an article in the paper that, Indio and La Quinta are going through the same types of issues with IID. They essentially brought any development in that particular area, as well as some pockets of Palm Desert, to a halt right now. They've adopted a policy that if a developer wants to move forward, they must construct the substation infrastructure. So when you're looking at each one of those substations in the $15 to $25 million range, and you're looking at significant amounts of money. So where we are at this point is staff has been investigating various ways where we might be able to provide a vehicle for our property owners within the corporate limits, as well as potentially this area to finance the necessary electrical infrastructure should IID even agree that if, with our solutions, that they would provide power and wheel power to this particular area. I think that really needs to remain our sole focus on this discussion this next year, primarily for the reason that until the electrical issue is taken out of play, there is no way to put a pro forma together and even attempt to calculate what kind of tax benefits would be derived from this entire area. They can't, Burger Foundation's really locked down and not able to put a pro forma together. And we have about 20 property owners within Palm Desert that are not able to secure electric rights and develop their property. So this is a more significant area, I think, issue than annexation right now. And I would probably urge the city council to alter this goal significantly to just deal with, options, to explore options to bring power to the Northern Palm Desert. And if it's possible, take a look at partnering with folks north of I-10 if there's any economy of scale. That has to be done before any of these other conversations really mean anything. So that's where we are at this point on this particular goal.
Mayor Pro Tem has a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Since one of the second part of the accomplishments is the collaboration with LAFCO to annex Sun City, would that also be part of their plan to require a substation since that area already has the infrastructure?
I don't believe so. The important thing with the LAFCO process is it's my understanding, and Eric can correct me if I'm wrong, that in previous discussions on this topic, there was a couple of things that were huge obstacles to considering annexation. One was that we would have to potentially annex Sun City, Palm Desert, and the second one was that we potentially have to annex Bermuda Dunes. The issue with what we heard back from LAFCO was that Sun City, Palm Desert has been taken out of the equation, and we believe that Bermuda Dunes has as well. So that changes the conversation a little bit, or actually quite a bit. But we still have major infrastructure issues out there, roadway systems, drainage systems, electrical issues that have to be dealt with before we can even calculate what the costs and benefits would be of annexing that particular area. So that was the importance of the LAFCO process.
Thank you.
Councilmember Drewby.
Yeah, just talking about the boundaries of the potential annexation. It says west Washington Street would form the eastern boundary, Ivy Ranch the western boundary. To the north, Coachella Valley National Wildlife Refuge. Does that extend all the way to Ramon Road? Do you know?
The reserve extends all the way to Ramon Road. And so we would annex to the southern portion of the reserve and nothing north of that.
Okay, so our northern boundary under this scenario would be Ramon Road. Is that correct?
No, because we wouldn't take in the refuge reserve.
Okay.
So it would actually be kind of just north of the Classic Club.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
So we have some models from other cities around California that have been in a similar situation. So they've set up what I would call holding utilities, which are basically just pass-through financing mechanisms that we're taking a look at, as well as some other ways of potentially financing this that we can offer our property owners that are impacted. But I really think that needs to be our focus the next year or two before we talk about anything else in terms of annexation. And I just wanted to throw that out there for the council to talk about.
And that conversation will happen after this complete recap, right?
That's correct. Whether or not to retain this as a goal or modify it. Okay, next slide.
All right, I'm back. All right, so we've made some good progress here in the broadband master plan goal. Initially, staff met with the Coachella Valley Association of Governments to understand what their efforts were in relation to their CV Sync project and how they might be expanding fiber throughout the entire Coachella Valley. Staff also looked at other options for broadband, including some private infrastructure options. There was a company that we had met with that would actually build out their own network, and we explored that option. We also met with the city of Ontario, which started their own enterprise, providing their own broadband services. Based on the feedback that we heard from the city council, we actually went forward and initiated a contract with HR Green to prepare a broadband feasibility and master plan study. That study was executed in the fourth quarter of last year, and we are in the midst of that study now. To date, we've had stakeholder meetings, not only with city staff, the Coachella Valley Association of Governments, the Coachella Valley Economic Partnership, but also our school districts, College of the Desert, and many of our nonprofits in the Coachella Valley to better understand what their needs may be. Right now, we're also conducting community surveys, and the rest of the study is conducting outreach to the various service providers. We are well underway in this study. It's anticipated to be completed late this summer or early fall. And we are also exploring options for additional funding, not only for the study, but if the study comes back and shows what the needs are, what the potential options are for us to expand service, the funding mechanism to build out a kind of a network. So that's our update on this goal. And if there's no questions on this, I can pass it over to Amy Lawrence for environmental initiatives.
Next slide.
Looks like we got a question from Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If you will go back one step in regards to broadband, you said it was the city of Ontario, I believe, that you visited. As they mentioned, the way that they created their own, were there any setbacks or challenges that they encountered that we could potentially get ahead of as we explore creating our own?
Yeah, they've had it's been many years in the making for them to get this started. And they've had the most success expanding the network to new development, but the funding needed to expand it into existing neighborhoods has been a challenge for them, and they're just getting into that now. One of their biggest challenges that they have is even as they build out the network, there's not enough people signing on to the system to support it financially.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. In relation to the environmental initiatives goal, the City Council adopted the environmental initiatives plan to track sustainability related projects over the next few years, which will be reported on both quarterly and annually. As noted upon adoption of the plan within 3 to 5 years, so between fiscal years 24-25 and 26-27, staff will bring forward a proposal to work with a consultant on a formal sustainability plan. And until then, cross-departmental staff will continue to collaborate and work on implementing projects outlined in the current plan. We will also bring forward new projects through research and new legislation for consideration by the Resource Preservation and Enhancement Committee and also the City Council. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions about this project. And if there's no questions, I can pass the next slide over to Director of Public Works.
Looks like Councilmember, we have a couple of questions. Go ahead, Councilmember Arnick, and then Mayor Pro Tem.
I think this is quick. We're talking about the alternative fuel vehicles for the city fleet. And, you know, of course, we've gone down that road before. What are those alternative fuel, or would you rather us wait with these questions? Would that be better? Or how do you want us to deal with this?
You know, when it comes to the particulars of these initiatives, I think the quarterly report would be the logical time to get into the weeds.
Okay, I'm happy to wait. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I can also hold my question. It was one question and another piece of gratitude. Thank you. Reading that report has been a view of the substantial undertaking. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. We can pass it on to Director of Public Works, Martin Alvarez.
Good morning, Mayor, members of the City Council. We're going to provide you an update on our active transportation projects, and I'm going to turn this over to Randy Bowman, who's been working on this throughout the year. If we can have him elevated.
Martine, this slide concerns North Sphere planning and North Sphere Park. Do you want to cover that?
Sure, I can cover this one. Absolutely. As you know, we've been working on some planning and data gathering from residents to ensure that we have proper information as to what the needs are, what the desires are for a future regional park. We've been looking at 2 locations. One is the northern 27 acres that is north of Gerald Ford, and also east and west of Genesis. So we've had several meetings with residents in the area. We provided a lot of opportunity to provide feedback. We gathered quite a bit of information over some of the meetings that we had. We're to a point where we have the feedback, and we're going to put together a plan to come back to the City Council and provide that information to you shortly. The next steps here is to try to consolidate the information, provide some concepts, both for the northern community park we're calling, and also a southern regional park that is going to be generally located between Portola and College, north of Frank Sinatra. We're looking at about 35 to 40 acres, depending on what the data comes back in terms of needs for facilities. Like I mentioned, we held several open house and public engagement meetings at the iHub. We provided information on our Engage Palm Desert website. We had surveys. So we feel that we have a good amount of information. We're still continuing with the community engagement. We're reaching out to the Desert Sands Unified School District and some of the other larger stakeholders, including the YMCA and also that other groups that are throughout the city. So we will be providing that information to you at the, I believe, in this next city council meeting, I believe in March. And then we'll continue from there to provide options and information to both the Parks and Recreation Committee and to the City Council, and move forward with bringing back some conceptual design. That, I believe, covers in general where we're at and where we're headed. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Martin, there is one bullet point in the next steps that I didn't hear you touch upon, and that's the first bullet point, that as plans for the park progresses, it's also our intent to review optimal land uses around the park site, including housing, office, and retail. I do want to make sure that stays in the picture, since residents in that area have expressed interest in having more walkable destinations.
Absolutely. So there are two sites. The northern one, the 27 acres. We're going to continue to work with the residents to make sure that we have the appropriate, I call them passive uses that they've been requesting, with the trails and open spaces and some of the smaller community park amenities. And
retail is the key word in that bullet point, going beyond park recreational uses. There's expressed interest in making sure that our zoning and our planning invites coffee shops or other walkable destinations.
Yes, absolutely. So on the northern part, of course, we're going to look at that as well. But I think what this bullet point refers to is probably more of the southern regional park. You know, I call it the Frank Sinatra Park, if you will. That is part of the university neighborhood specific plan. And so we're going to have to integrate that 35, 40 acres into that specific plan that will include additional housing, which is already planned. In fact, we also have some dedication for affordable housing in this other regional area, which will include walkable, mixed use areas as part of that regional park.
And Mayor, you are correct. We will, once the park is set, we will be replanning that particular area, updating that zoning there to make sure that we can accommodate any additional retail pockets in there as well. So that will be part of this. Once the park discussion is set, we'll replan the other 110 acres roughly it'll be left.
Okay, next.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. This goal is public safety improvements, and the goal was to explore technologies in public safety and also to review public safety services. So first, on the fire front, early last year, you received a report from Matrix Consulting Group on fire services, recommending the creation of a 4th fire station to improve response times and services in the northern portion of the city. So we have been underway with that initiative. In August, we hired a new public works project manager who has been facilitating and leading that project. In addition, last month, you awarded a contract for design for Fire Station 102, as well as to assess stations 33 and 71. Our goal on the fire side is to bring back an update on the full scope of the project, hire a construction management team, as well as an independent estimator to make sure that the costs are controlled over the life of the project. On the police side, last year we completed full installation of the automated license plate recognition system. So 49 cameras throughout the city. This has been a highly effective tool for law enforcement in making sure that they close cases fast. Next month, we'll be bringing back to you a full report update on the success and progress of the ALPR system from our Lieutenant Chris Willison. Continuing on police, we are in the middle of reviewing services similar like we did with fire services on the effectiveness of our law enforcement services. We are working very closely with the Sheriff's Department to come up with recommendations and solutions, and we'll bring forward those to you as well. I'm happy to answer any questions. Okay, so with that, I'll turn it back over to Martine and Randy Bowman for ATP.
Thanks, Chris. We'll turn this over to Randy Bowman. Thanks.
Good morning, everybody. We wanted to list all the projects that are in process through the Active Transportation Program, program that is intended to increase accommodation for bicycles and pedestrians through a series of improvements. Also policy change. The City Council last year adopted the CVAG Active Transportation Design Guidelines, which are being applied to both private development projects and city capital improvement projects. So on the screen is a rundown of projects that are in various phases of completion in the construction phase, everything from the Haystack Road traffic calming phase 1 all the way down to PD Link phase 1. We have contractors that are out there on the streets right now that are wrapping up several of these projects. Also, I included in this list the CVAG CV Sync phase 1 improvement. It's managed by CVAG. It runs through our city on Highway 111 and on Washington Street. And part of that project is to improve signal timing for bicycles and pedestrians. Let's go to the next slide, please. This slide conveys information regarding projects that are in stages of design. Everything from up at top, improving traffic operations and capacity improvements at intersections. We have a project that will update 10 signalized intersections. Its design is nearly complete and construction will be bidding in the second quarter of this year. To roadway safety improvements, this is a project that is 100% funded by the state. $2.2 million is what we received from the state to upgrade crosswalks and pedestrian signals and add reflective backplates to traffic signal heads to improve visibility of traffic signals throughout the city. It proceeds at a slow pace because of the state funding, but it is 100% funded by the state. PD Link Phase 2 will consist of a Class 4, and a Class 4 bikeway is a two-way bikeway that is separated from motor vehicles by a median. That is in design, and we expect to be bidding that out by the first half of this year. We will be making Phase 2 improvements to Haystack Road this summer. We're going to be bidding that out here in the second quarter. The CV Link Hobley Connector is a project that the design is being managed by CVAG, and by agreement, the city will own the construction contract. That project was placed on hold because of a need for CVAG and CVWD to coordinate improvements in the Whitewater Channel near the CVWD water treatment facility. And we are working with both of those entities to help them land on a final design of the project, and then we will bid out its construction. Presently, we don't have a date for that because of the issues that CVAG and CVWD are working through. Tomorrow at a study session with City Council, staff will provide City Council an update on the Walk and Roll PD project, which is really a project that focuses on filling gaps in sidewalks and bikeways throughout the community. We were also this first half of this year bidding out enhancements to the CV Link project. We have watched users of the CV Link and motorists and need to make some enhancements through signs and pavement markings to make more clear the function of the CV Link. And then lastly, great news, the city had applied to the state for Safe Routes to Schools funding. It's SRTS, and that's a planning effort that would help the city work with the schools to improve safety for children around schools through looking at operational as well as design related issues in the roadways so that we can improve the experience for children and motorists alike in the school zones. We'd applied for those funds from the state, but unfortunately the competition was great and we didn't win the day on the state funding. However, the federal government issued a new program called Safe Streets for All, and the city applied for and is going to receive $750,000 to do an SRTS, I'll call it on steroids effort. And that's federal money. So there's a lot of red tape and strings that have to be plucked, but we will be proceeding with the SRTS plan with this federal funding in FY 23-24. Happy to answer any questions.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. In terms of the red tape that is present, what do you foresee in your magic crystal ball of all that could happen would be some of the challenges that would make it difficult, again, being that they're federal standards?
Sure thing. A lot of paperwork has to be filled out and completed, and steps have to be completed before you can proceed to the next steps according to the federal government. The US DOT is actually granting this money directly to the city, and the FHWA, Federal Highway Administration, will be administering the program. There is a webinar coming up very soon for grant recipients of the SS4A grant, and sorry for that acronym. And then they will be reaching out to us to instruct us on the next steps to complete forms, to enter into grant agreements with the US DOT, and then they prescribe a process for procuring professional services. We will need to hire a consulting firm, a qualified consulting firm, to do this work for us. And all along the way, the federal government will be assisting us to make sure that we're auditable and following the procedures.
Thank you very much.
Randy, I want to express a couple kudos. I love seeing the Class 3 sharrows on key routes around town. And I was very impressed with how quickly and efficiently the process proceeded of getting those onto the streets. It seemed to happen overnight. So they look great. And our initial steps on Haystack have been affirmed in an ironic way. I've heard some complaints from people who don't like the stop signs because they're not able to speed along Haystack the way they used to. So that, of course, is precisely the point that speeding along Haystack has produced a hazard for the neighborhood. And I will say that in nearly every case when I've explained the challenges and some of the neighborhood concerns, people have been quite sympathetic. So the street was simply too inviting as a quick thoroughfare, and we're clearly making progress in sending a different signal. So terrific. Mr. Heilman.
Okay, can we have the next slide, please? So now that we've completed the recap on where we are, what we've accomplished, and where we are currently, we wanted to turn this over to each one of you on the council to kind of identify your top 3 goals, just kind of give your feedback on where you think that the council's goals should be and where staff should be focusing on the next year. And then when we're completed with this process, we've developed a couple of feedback mechanisms to facilitate the conversation. So if we could go to the next slide, we wanted to go ahead and kick this off with Councilmember Harnick and explain the initiatives that she submitted.
Well, thank you. So the initiatives that come up are well described here, and as are the justification of the priority. I feel that we have such a great art program, and we are not investing in it to really have it leveraged to its maximum. And you know, a perfect example is our most recent event for the kickoff of our El Paseo exhibition. And it was kind of anemic when it really is exciting. And it's something that is amazing. We get hundreds of applications to be part of it. These are international artists. It does coincide with the same year as Desert X, which is something we can build upon. And as it's listed here, public art is a piece of our brand. So how do we give permission to the staff to really, and I know it's more than permission, it's also funding, but I feel these are really investments to be bolder with our events, to really make something out of them. There's no reason why when we're kicking off an 18-piece sculpture exhibit like we did, that it really shouldn't get a lot of attention and really be something that excites the public. And I just want us to give our staff permission to go bold, you know, to really engage big energy in these efforts. And if that means too, that maybe if there needs to be some education on events, and of course, I know with any kind of event like this, one of the key pieces is working with marketing on it and advertising. And I just think we have these great events. We need to leverage on them. We need to make them more of an asset to the city of Palm Desert and, you know, generate more revenue through them. So that is the event issue or thoughts. Do you want me just to move through, or how do you want to deal with this?
Yeah, why don't we move through? If anyone has clarifications, they can.
Yeah, what I'd like to do is have each council member quickly recap your the goals that you submitted. Staff have had time to sit back and try to form these into a big picture. So let's present them, hear from staff, and go from there.
Okie doke. So next is that lot that we have on Ocotillo and Tumbleweed. And it's been sitting there empty for quite some time. The only thing we do with it is clean it up occasionally and have dust that comes up from it when we don't have anything tamping that down. And how do we turn something that is a liability into an asset? And I'm wondering, one of our goals always is to try and have fewer cars on El Paseo, to make it more bike friendly and NEV friendly and pedestrian friendly. So if we were to take that lot and create a parking structure, and I wrote here multi-level parking structure, we could have service type of retail on the bottom if we chose, but we definitely could make it a good place to park and to either rent e-bikes or rent some type of micro mobility if we can make sure that it is safe and appropriate for El Paseo. But it also would create a place where we could do drop off and pick up for people to leave their cars and use our courtesy carts. So rather than filling up El Paseo with lots of parking and lots of cars, let's move that to a place that might work better for our retailers, our merchants, and our visitors, and of course, always our community members. So that was that thought. The other economic development, and this is a new initiative, and thank you for those cute little red banners over there. Just like we were talking about CBRE earlier, sometimes there are things that are just out of our reach. And looking at, we're going to have Tuesday mornings going to be empty. We've got Pier 1 empty. We may well have Bed Bath & Beyond empty. And we also have the empty pads at Desert Willow. We have a lot of those issues. And rather than looking through a narrow focus, we should be looking bigger at a national sort of very inclusive focus. And that's just not something we have the capacity to do here at the city. And to bring in an independent contractor, just as we've done with CBRE, not only allows them to look at the bigger picture, the national and in fact international picture to find things for the city, but it also gives a great opportunity for the staff to learn a lot from these people who look through a different lens at economic development. So I think bringing in that independent contractor would be an asset, would be a real investment, and I think we'd see different results than looking at our neighbors and seeing if we can share one of their businesses with them. We need to think bigger than that. The last, we used to have somebody who'd say, well, let's see what the other cities are doing. That's not our focus. Palm Desert's focus is to be the best Palm Desert could be, not to be what other cities are in our valley. So I think an independent contractor who thinks big would be a great asset, not only for the city, but for the Palm Desert team as well. So those are my three, and of course I could have gone on forever, but I won't.
Okay. We do the next slide. Councilmember.
Okay. I am up. So 2 out of my 3 priorities, as you can see, are the ongoing and Cal State University, for the reasons already mentioned in the presentation. I believe for me, it's the top priority. Education is going to be the foundation of our economic vitality, and so it really needs to be our focus. And I know Todd and our staff and council, it seems like we're all on board for that to be a top priority. I don't need to go on. And another priority we've already discussed, the Westfield Mall. Again, it's so important for our economic health, for our city. And I'm glad that we have hired consultants and to think beyond retail for that site, perhaps residential. So, or even education, to look at maybe COD extension campus on this site is another possibility. What we can do with this site, the possibilities are limitless, and I have that as the top priority. And then following up on Councilmember Harnick's new priority, mine does relate to hers. I focused more on the Desert Willow pads, but I agree with what Councilmember Harnick was saying. We need to be looking at existing sites as well, over by Bed Bath & Beyond and those other areas. And I too think we need an outside national consultant to help support our staff here. Our staff's doing a great job, but I think we need to bring it to the national level and invest in a consultant. And that's it.
Okay. Next slide. Councilmember Truby.
Okay, thank you, everybody, for the opportunity. I guess I only submitted 2 because, I'm 7 weeks in. I want to make sure I keep it focused and stay in my lane. But as far as number 1 priority for me would be a revision of the general plan, in as much as, or at least to give our city more tools to protect our autonomy in future development as much as possible. I know a lot of the land we're 70-80% built out, and there may be a lot of the land that sits in the northern part of our town, our city rather, is already entitled. So there may not be much wiggle room in this, but I just want to make sure that moving forward, we're not hamstrung, as we saw with the development on the 394 apartment complex on the corner of Frank Sinatra and Portola there, that I'm not hamstrung by what developers want and what Sacramento wants. I want to make sure that the city develops and moves forward with our vision, not somebody else's vision. So and I think there may already be some work on the general plan on this. Now, number 2, with homeless services. So I went to that new mayor and council person event, or 3-day symposium in Universal City. Came across a lot of other council people who shared a lot of ideas, and there were, there were some successful programs that I found out about that were happening in other cities. One of them in particular was that social work action group that was working in Temecula area, and they're having a lot of success transitioning people from homelessness into programs and getting them off the street. Because I think the feedback that I've noticed so far on council from residents is this is a problem. We're noticing a lot of basically homeless people, vagrancy, and it's affecting their business and affecting just the overall feel of the city. Now, I will say that I think what we're doing with our 2 resource officers and the sheriff's department are already doing a great job. This may not be necessary. I just, it was just more in response to feedback we were getting from residents. And actually, after in the week or 2 of chewing on this particular initiative that I submitted, I got to thinking, well, oftentimes when a city starts to offer services for homelessness and issues like that, it sometimes can have the negative effect in as much as it can attract those type of people into town. So it may very well turn out that this hiring an outside service to provide more services for homeless people may actually be counterproductive. And part number 2 to consider on this one, and again, I've given myself a little time to think about this, is that, and this is feedback I've heard from other cities, sometimes when you hire outside entities to provide homelessness services, their interest is not necessarily in solving the problem. Well, we want to solve the problem. We want to have fewer homeless people, have them housed and off the streets. Well, oftentimes, and this sounds terrible and a little cynical, but sometimes their interest is not in curing the problem, but in making sure that they justify their existence in providing these services. And therefore, maybe we're at odds in our goals. So just something that you want to consider. Like I said, I feel much more strongly about the general plan or future development and having some autonomy there than I do about my goal number 2. So there you have it.
Next slide. Okay. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I found that all of the priorities that were presented and all of the projects are doing excellent. We have remarkable staff and so much work has been done that I didn't want to toss too much out there. And continuing the work towards Cal State, we need to engage former students perhaps to be part of the lobbying and state testimonies to advocate and not continue to allow the San Bernardino campus to see Palm Desert as a drain or as a stepchild. That being part of my experience as a former employee at the Palm Desert campus. So I think that while we have our priorities in order, I think that the impact from student testimonies would be great. And now that we have that subcommittee with student services, I think that would be a good place to to recruit students. And part of that, I think, is I know it may already be part of the discussion, is to show the state and show the Cal State system how united our valley has been. If you go into their health services or building, you see different cities and different lobbies are above the doors, and they're showing how much of a commitment and the financial component. The other one is following up on the annexing the North Sphere. We've already discussed the impact of EMS services and fire. And another area is, as we talk about the growth, we need to look at what Riverside County wants to do and how they are facing an immediate impact, and how we can help mitigate to say, we're doing you the favor of having you address part of these unincorporated areas. And as somebody who grew up in Thousand Palms and knows the challenges of working with the county, for example, when my parents had a house fire, the developers, in order to get the permits, had to drive to Riverside to submit some of them in person. So having, again, residents from those areas being able to be at the table, beyond LAFCO and all of these powers that be, having more direct resident input of how this would benefit them, I think would continue. Now, I did submit a third priority. I don't know. There we go. This one would be a new initiative. So while we've been talking about the discussions about how to grow our economic development, we have seen a lot of data that says that we need experience-based activities. And national trends are that malls are in decline. And as we talk about mixed use in our future, I think that we need to look at something like bowling or family-friendly karaoke, because we have families that visit. We've got people that come for a conference and look around and say, I don't want to take a 4-year-old hiking. I don't want to take them to the golf course, but I can take them inside and see if they want to learn to roller skate. We know that people have been saying, well, we've got the arena that's coming on board and they've got free skate hours, but they are not open on days that they have events. And as we've seen, they have things in the middle of the week, they have things on the weekends, and their hours are limited. I think this would be a great opportunity if we have something like a roller rink to have families of a middle income or possibly even lower resources to tell their kids, let's even show me that you can skate. Show me that you're truly interested before we invest in all of this equipment. So I was able to provide some information from Forbes articles. There is no competition for this anywhere near. The closest one, I think, is in Temecula, and then beyond that, it's Orange County. So this would be a unique opportunity. If we wanted to provide a bowling alley, that could be something that would be included in some of this multi-use center. Currently, families have the option of going to the casino, and there's a 4-hour wait. And who wants to be there with an 8-year-old running around for 4 hours waiting at the casino? We have Palm Springs Lanes, and a lot of the complaints there are that it hasn't been as of an attractive place because a lot of deferred maintenance is needed. So again, I think that exploring experience-based opportunities that can be used for different families of different incomes would be attractive. And it would give our new mall development an opportunity. Another, to touch on something I mentioned, would be karaoke, right? Right now, if you enjoy that as a family activity, you're not going to take your 10-year-old to a bar. So this would be something that could be done for birthday parties. As you know, we've got very talented students that want to record themselves in a professional environment. This would be a great place to record something and submit an audition. So there's a lot of potential there. We could also increase our TOT when we look at activities like the roller derby. So there are roller derby circuits and they are bypassing the Coachella Valley. So again, that would increase our TOT as people stay overnight. And so there's a lot of opportunity at a lot of different directions. And as a council member Harnick, we need to do something that does not take away from other cities. We need to be innovative. So that in a brief little bit, we have a lot of opportunities in a lot of different sectors. Thank you.
Well, thank you to my colleagues. I see a lot of this weaving together. For all the reasons Gina expressed, I certainly see advocating for our CSUSB Palm Desert campus to ultimately be a freestanding campus as the paramount city goal for as long as it takes to get it accomplished. Because there is nothing that can have an equally positive impact on our city's character and growth. The only reason I did not feature that here is that having just secured the funding for the Student Center, this is a year, particularly in the context of the challenged state budget, in which protecting that and implementing that is probably the most we can accomplish. So I tried to focus on what I thought really deserved a spotlight this year. And I led with the mall because it is so clearly at a tipping point and a very consequential tipping point. But I don't see that we can do more than has been listed on the next steps. Secondly, I featured the North area built out, consistent with what Evan was saying. We really need to make sure that our land use planning for that area suits our purposes within the confines of the regulatory environment. Now is the time to do it before developers or builders have vested interests. As to these first two, now that I've heard everyone else speak, I really see them as parts of a bigger whole. And that bigger whole is defined by Jan's third objective, to really have what I would call a master economic development plan informed by the best expertise. The mall, the North Sphere, Desert Willow are all discrete parts of that. But they need to be discrete parts of a whole, which is informed by the best possible expertise. And that plan, of course, would be the place to incorporate Karina's ideas about experience-based opportunities, which research does show attracts people to support all other businesses. So much is connected from what we discussed. And then lastly, I featured the environmental front, simply because I wanted to make sure we don't start to think of that as a list of boxes which we check and then forget about. It's a forever goal that we want to inculcate into our thinking about everything. I do think the intention to form a 5-year plan is the right current step, given how quickly technologies evolve. I think we'll get to a place where we're reviewing that 5-year plan annually and revising it, updating it. So we are perpetually planning 5 years forward. But as to that, I'm not promoting something different from staying the course. Again, it's just something that I felt deserved a spotlight. So So, Todd, staff has had a chance to chew on all of this input. Show us how you might suggest weaving together.
Okay, can I have the next slide, please? Okay, next slide. So one of the things that first pieces of feedback, actually, I think the way Anthony restructured that last slide, we could probably go past that one as well to the next slide. Okay. Basically, I think where we're at this point is we tried to break down the feedback and think through council members' suggestions and put together a strategy for you. I wanted to break apart the economic development projects a little bit. The Desert Willow strategy, I just want to remind council, we got direction to take that through the Surplus Land Act process this year. So we'll be aggregating all those parcels and taking it through. Once that's done, Eric Seha has been reaching out to the firm that helped us with the market analysis, market assessment of the mall to try to give us an updated ideas on what could be possible there. Again, if this was owned by somebody in the private sector, so we could develop ideas for the city council to kick around, assuming that no affordable housing projects are brought forward. So that would be the idea there. We agree on the consultant for the business recruitment retention. Basically, what is the need study? Do we need to start planning for different strategies in different areas? And we can certainly talk about that. I think I'm viewing much more robust attempt at in terms of identifying particular markets, but both of those I think can be weaved into the similar council goal. The North Sphere planning, I don't want to forget that either, because we are going to need to get a new team in place to plan retail opportunities, business opportunities once that park is set. So we can potentially bring, this may be 2 projects, it may be 3, but if the council wants to incorporate those as continued goals which deserve funding and our time as we move forward, we can certainly do that. The research is there. We can identify the experts that are best in their field in these particular areas to help us out. It's probably not going to be 1. It's probably going to be 2 or 3 because they are such, I like the word discrete areas with different focuses and different expertises. And this is how we would likely approach that. The North Sphere planning is the one that, I'm sorry, this North Sphere planning, CSU would be continuation goals. We didn't do much other than just suggest that on each of those continuation goals that they be left as a council goal. The one that I did want to talk about again, though, was managing our expectations on that annexing north of I-10. I don't see that right now as something that it's achievable. It's not even worth, we can't put a number to it. We can't really discuss it from a policy perspective until we can discuss putting some kind of a solution in place to get power to our own property owners, as well as the property north of I-10. That is really the key to unlocking any future discussions with Cathedral City, LAFCO, the blank property owners up in that area. So I would alter the annexation north of I-10 to really trying to identify solutions to bring IID power to those particular areas. I think an important part of this discussion with council is just managing expectations and you can kind of working on things that we can control. And that is something I think that not only can we control at least what we're presenting to you, but we owe it to the existing property owners within our corporate boundaries who can't develop their properties. So that would have been the one continuation change I would make. The new ones, I just want to run this by you and then we'll get some feedback. Mayor, you may want to just kind of take them through one at a time, but I wanted to explain how we put this into this matrix here. The Ocotillo tumbleweed lot that was brought up, family-based activities, we're viewing those more as kind of research options, almost a study session type or research for the council, just to come back with some ideas, recommendations to the council. Same thing with the event marketing and awareness. You know, what research options do we have? That one we thought a little bit differently on, though, because of it probably is worthy of an ad hoc council subcommittee, because we know we need another committee. But I think that it probably makes some sense for a couple of you to work with staff and just say, all right, let's take a look at how do we improve or expand our event marketing, robustness, particularly with the 50th anniversary coming up. This has really been a big issue. And if there's new ideas, let's discuss that. Spend a year with council members just kicking ideas around on how we might redo the budget or think differently, come up with that plan, and then if we need to bring the committee back, it's always there. So we like that idea. The general plan update, Evan's correct. I think council's aware that we are moving, and we'll be bringing a proposal to you soon to bring on a consultant to help us develop design guidelines, which is something the state has mandated we have to do in order to ensure that ARC it can be effective in that process, as well as the general plan update. I'm going to suggest that, again, this is a research project, similar to what we did with the school boundary discussion, that we bring an expert on from the BBK to work with our staff just to give you some outlines as far as what you can do from the general plan perspective. The state has eroded your authority so much in this area. I think we need to set realistic expectations for what ordinances or what policies, what general plan updates can you do that will be sustained and are defendable. And that's a whole nother set of research that needs to be completed. And the homelessness services, we can certainly take a look at the SWAG program that Councilmember Truby brought up, and similar programs like that, and come back to you with some ideas. Our new social service coordinator just started this week, so we're in the process of working with him on his contacts and game plan and his work plan, and the timing of this probably couldn't have been much better. So anyway, in terms of breaking this down, the only new goal that we really saw here was kind of, more of a piecemeal approach at economic development based on those strategies. And because I think it's going to be different consultants, and then more research projects to come back to council. And if this is what you'd like us to focus on. And I hope this makes sense. We tried to make it as simple to understand as possible, and I'm hoping that we're as accurate as possible with what you wanted done.
Thank you. I, for one, think this is tremendously helpful. 8 through 12 are ideas that warrant some preliminary investigation before the council as a whole can say green light or yellow light or red light. They don't all necessarily warrant a study session. Some of them may be topics for simply a written report to inform council and leave it up to us if we want to push forward. The one thought that I have as I look at this is that I hate to see CSU Palm Desert Campus buried as a subtopic under economic development, because it's about more than economics. It's about educational opportunities. I want to hear from my colleagues, but my own perception is it might be more consistent with what we've said if it continues to be a distinct goal, number one, followed by the economic development projects. What do people think? Jan.
Thank you. I definitely think the CSU, and I look at when they say economic development, education in my mind is economic development, but I hear what you're saying. I think there's a reason we formed that 501c4, and the title of it is, thank you, Eric Seha, priority one, CB. It's the most important thing we have to work on. We have put so much effort into this, and we just have to continue. I genuinely believe it is the most important thing, and I know it's moving along, and there's a lot of planning in place to go forward, and I just think we have to continue with this. It is a priority.
Karina.
Thank you so much. I concur. I concur that that is not a priority that we can let slip into any other place. I don't know the degree of how aggressive our lobbyists have been, or if that would be something that would hurt us or harm us as we try to push forward. But we can't just continue to say we're working on it. This is decades in the making. This isn't something that we have just been kind of waiting. This is decades in the making. Our community is expecting progress. So I'm not sure, again, how aggressive they've been. And earlier, Councilmember Truby mentioned that sometimes when you hire those contractors, they want to move things along slowly because they want to keep extending their contract. So I'm not sure if this has been the experience with how successful our lobbyists have been, but this is decades in the making. And while I was very pleased that the word Stockton was not anywhere on the last set of plans, that is still a competing location, and we have to be more aggressive to say we are already here, we have infrastructure, we're ready to grow, and we've been waiting for decades, so we can't let it slip past that.
Thank you. I think the key adjective for advocacy is effective. Sometimes, as you suggested, sometimes aggressive is effective. Sometimes a different approach. And a $79 million investment in a new student center is effective. So we are exceedingly pleased with our current advocates who are recently quite effective in making sure that that $79 million check did not get canceled in the face of current budget challenges. But of course, we have to keep asking that question, and we will. Gina.
Yes. So Mayor, just following up on your comments and Councilmember Karina and Jan's comments about CSU, are we saying that we want it to have its own unique title under the heading education? And I guess the question is to Todd too, what are we asking staff to do differently?
We're just asking them to make that a distinct #1 goal until it gets accomplished.
Okay, so
it is priority 1.
mm-hmm.
Just as you proposed.
Right.
We're really all jumping on board with what you proposed, that it should be priority 1 for Palm Desert until it gets accomplished.
Very good. And Todd, do you have anything to add to our suggestions?
Not at all. It just became priority 1.
Very good.
All right.
Any other feedback? I really appreciate the thinking staff putting into this. And I think the best way to approach 8 through 12 is if your preliminary research on any of these indicates it's becoming a huge drain on staff time because of complications or vagaries, then come back to us and take our temperature as to whether there is sufficient majority support to take next steps. Does that make sense?
Sure, and absolutely. And if everybody, if the council's fine with the approach that we're looking at taking to try to check in with you, you know, on the note column there, I think we're really on board there.
Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Truby.
Thank you, Mayor. As I think that we've been talking about revising our master plan. I think that some of these should be added as possibilities as we look at maybe not a right now project, but something that we add to it. So for example, whether it's not the roller rink to having the plan to develop more family type experience based. And so I think those will be kind of placeholders so that we know as staff time becomes more available, as funding becomes available, that can be part of our focus as we look ahead to the future decades. So again, maybe not a right now, but a goal to continue to explore.
Thank you.
And we're happy to take that approach. Just for an example there, with the economic development world, there are firms that focus solely on developing family-based activity, economic development type approaches. And so I'll sit down with staff and the directors, and we'll come up with the best way to develop some research for you and get your feedback, and we'll check in with you on occasion.
Councilmember Troopy and then Councilmember Arnick.
Yeah, I just want to clarify two things. Mayor Kelly, you mentioned about the North Sphere build out and wanted to make sure, we got so much vacant land. We want to make sure it gets done correctly or on our terms. I think you and I are speaking sort of about the same thing when I mentioned about the general plan update. Am I correct on that? That we're sort of speaking the same language, but from two different directions. Is that right?
They're closely related topics. I think you're coming at it from the vantage point of making sure that all of our ordinances and zoning maximize our opportunity to exercise local decision-making to the extent possible. And that's part of what I'm talking about. I'm also talking about assuring that we meet the interest of local residents for certain types of retail services.
Perfect. No, I agree with you. I think we're on the same page exactly. And, I just want to make sure we tighten this thing up and aren't redundant. So if there's any way to combine those two things or whatever, so we're not going in several different directions. And with regard to my homeless services request or goal, I personally, I don't know how this rest of the council feels, but I personally feel that can be put on the back burner to a large degree until we see how our newly hired resource officer goes. That's another consideration that I, hadn't factored into my goal setting. So just for what it's worth for Todd and the rest of the council, thank you.
Well, that's a very constructive thought. That we might give at least 9 months for our latest change to bear fruit, so that we can see how that's going. So if that makes sense to everyone else, Todd, that is listed as 12, that would mean that it's not the first project undertaken, that, as Evan suggested, we give our latest change a chance to take root before we compare that to alternatives.
Sure. I'll be happy to let Chris Escobedo and Jason kind of work through that, and we'll come back to you as he's getting his work plan put in place. I think that's something that we'll probably, I want to run by you anyway at some point, because I know this is near and dear to your heart. And before we meet with the homelessness committee and the public safety commission, I think it would be wise to just kind of let you know where his focus is. So we're happy to do that.
And Evan, I do think we need to keep 11 as a distinct topic, because reviewing our ordinances impacts parts of the city apart from the North Sphere. So it makes sense as a separate number 11. So thank you for that. Jan.
Thank you. As far as the SWAG program, I know they're using it in San Bernardino. I've had a number of discussions and they seem very happy with it. So at the very least, just let's find out from our new representative if they're aware of it, if they have any highs or lows in that program that they think that they can learn from and use in our city. I just wanted to say, I think the way this is set forth is clear, it's logical, and I think it will be a nice roadmap to productivity. So great job. Thank you.
And seeing no other hands, I believe that last statement speaks for us all. Thank you to the council and to staff. We've really, in the last 2-3 years, evolved a highly efficient, helpful process to inform budgeting.
Mhm.
So I have about 30 minutes before I believe a closed session is scheduled.
That's correct. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.